they out for? What time is it? Oh my god. Wait, there's only 5 seconds of summer left. How am I ever gonna get this video done in time? Five Seconds of Summer is an interesting band, to say the least. You might call them a boy band in their earlier years, but I think they really broke out of that nomenclature, maturing their sound and their image in a somewhat short span of years in the limelight. Either way, they're a band whose music I love dearly. Five Sauce is an artist that I've wanted to include in this series for a while, but it's taken me a minute or two to figure out the why, the reason for making a video on them, other than I want to make a video on them that could pop off. I wouldn't be exploring a brand new artist, I wouldn't be revisiting my relationship with this band because they haven't ever really left my rotation, and I wouldn't be testing the waters of a new genre or a controversial artist. Something was missing from this video. The idea needed a little more sauce, and I was having trouble thinking of anything to freshen up the concept. And that is when my lovely girlfriend came into play. As I'm sure many of you are, my girlfriend is an avid TikTok user, and she'd recently seen a clip for Calum promoting his brand new solo debut album. Out of curiosity, I did some digging, and decided to look and see how many Five Sauce members have actually started their solo careers. And as it turns out, it's all of them. Every single one has a debut album now. Plus, with Michael Clifford's Sidequest releasing just last week, this feels like the perfect time to farm the algorithm and pump out a video. So, sit back, relax, and enjoy, because I listen to every Five Sauce album and then some, so you don't have to. Before we can talk about any solo albums, however, we need to talk about where it all began. Sydney, Australia, 2011. Luke Hemmings, Calum Hood, Michael Clifford, and Ashton Irwin, all high school friends, would come together to form 5 Seconds of Summer. 3 years later, in 2014, their debut album, 5 Seconds of Summer, would be released to the public. At face value, Five Sauce looks like your average run-of-the-mill boy band, but they did a lot of things to distance themselves from that stereotypical image of a boy band. Firstly, well, they just said that they don't want to be a boy band. But secondly, they developed a style that really made them stand out from other boy bands of the time, in my opinion. While I think most boy bands follow a pretty safe and generic pop-driven sound, Five Sauce take a lot of inspiration from alt-rock and pop-punk artists, something that I don't think we see a lot of in the boy band genre. This is incredibly clear on the self-titled album, where you can see influences from bands like Blink-182, Green Day, Sum 41, and All Time Low. Alex Gaskarth of All Time Low even has a bunch of songwriting credits across self-titled. Right from the get-go, from this very first album too, Five Sauce has always stood out to me because of how authentic they feel. They play all of their own instruments on stage, which sounds like the bare minimum, but if you've seen other boy band performances, it's usually a backing track, or there's a heightened focus on flashy choreography and dance moves. Throughout every single concert, though, every single member of Five Sauce ends up singing and playing an instrument, which is crazy to me, because it makes them feel a lot more like authentic and genuine than some of their competition. Anyways, enough about the band and their stage presence, let's talk about the album itself. 5 Seconds of Summer has a distinct pop-punk influence across its 12 songs and 3 bonus tracks, a creative choice that works incredibly well for them. While distinct from any artists that come before them, self-titled also does have a somewhat nostalgic feel to it. I will say that the distinct problem with self-titled, however, is that it is definitely an album that you will grow out of in time. When I say that this is an immature album, I don't mean in the Blink-182 dick joke kind of way.
I heard that some of the people in Chicago that have sex aren't even married. Fucking sinners.
I mean that the lyrical themes on this album are very high school, and that's not a problem at all. Remember, these kids are in high school when they make this album, so it makes sense that these are the subject matters that would get discussed. And while the songs are insanely catchy from start to finish, especially as far as production goes, I do think I end up preferring a lot of the more mature lyrical themes on future releases. Again, this isn't a bad thing. I'm just 25 now, so it's a little harder for me to relate to the high school kissy prom dance songs. Even though I lived through those at one point, it's just not something that I relate to as much anymore. That being said, even with these immature high school level themes, the rock influence really helps to make this album incredibly listenable for me, especially on repeat plays. Even as someone who is long past high school now, as I just mentioned, each of these songs are incredibly pleasant to listen to, starting with the album's 4 singles: She Looks So Perfect, Don't Stop, Amnesia, and Good Girls. She Looks So Perfect is the favorite child of these singles, and for good reason. You could say it's a bit corny, but I think it's more accurate to say that the song is a piece of its time, and a slice of life of the members at the time. Lyrics aside, the shouted heys bring the song together and keep the audience invested, not to mention gives the song an incredibly catchy touch. By this point, there are far bigger songs as far as raw stream numbers go, but this will never not be one of, if Five Sauce's most iconic songs to me. But just because She Looks So Perfect is the standout single, it doesn't mean it's the only good one. Take Amnesia, for instance. Amnesia shines out to me as a great feat of songwriting. While I arguably flame the band for their immature songwriting, Amnesia is the exception to that rule. No matter what age we are, we have all experienced heartbreak in one way or another. Amnesia explores what I like to call the Eric Foreman problem. A heartbreak so bad that you want to remove a piece of your frontal lobe and just lose those particular memories entirely. The kind of heartbreak where you feel like your entire world is crumbling and nothing will ever be okay again. Amnesia puts that brutality on blast in a shockingly effective fashion. The simple acoustic backtrack on the song, paired with Calum's emotional delivery, wastes no time in breaking whatever listener is brave enough to click play on this track. Don't Stop is yet another single I adore, this time for its instrumental. We get a pumping and an exciting instrumental on the song. Man, I thought I had more to say about the song. Straight up. No, I guess that's it. Don't Stop's good. Just give it a try, trust me. Let's move on from singles for a second though and talk about Long Way Home. Long Way Home is a song that has some great pacing. Its verses lean on the reserve side, but have this dope, gradual build up into each chorus, with a great release of pressure and blast of sound every single time. If I have a favorite song on Self-Titled though, it's probably Heartbreak Girl. I love the perspective this song takes things from, because it feels like less of a conversation and more like a diary entry or a journaling exercise for one of the band members. I can't say I've ever been in a situation of romantically loving someone who's with a crappy partner and knowing I can provide better, but Heartbreak Girl feels like I'm dropping myself into one of those Harry Potter flashback scenes. It really feels like you're putting yourself into the shoes of the singer. Talking about Self-Titled's low points is a little difficult. Like I said, my distaste for some of these songs comes more from the subject matter rather than any production or performance issues. Songs like 18, Good Girls, Kiss Me, and Mrs. All-American just don't do much for me because I'm not 15 anymore. This isn't an album catered to my age group, to my demographic, and that is totally okay. All things considered, for as much flack as I just gave Self-Titled, I still really love this record. I don't know if I would call it a guilty pleasure because it's not something I'm guilty about. The band's fusion of pop and rock works really well here, and while it's definitely been done before by other bands, that doesn't mean it sounds bad or bland or generic here. Of Five Sauce's catalog, this is one I go back to quite frequently. The sophomore album is a formative moment in any young musician's career, and Five Sauce is no different. Their follow-up to Self-Titled, Sounds Good Feels Good, released in 2015, a year and 3 months after Self-Titled. Now, take what I'm about to say with a grain of salt. While not a massive step down from Self-Titled, I think it's still a step down regardless. There are plenty of high moments on this record, which we are going to get to in a little bit, but for me, I think Sounds Good Feels Good has a distinct lack of evolution, something that I think is really important for a band. The style is still good, don't get me wrong, but it more feels like Self-Titled Part 2 than it does its own individual release. That being said, one area where Five Sauce does improve on this record is songwriting. We still have a lot of the corny high school level songs fantasizing about love and girls, but we also get some more serious songs that talk about struggles with mental health and depression. Things that both sides of their audience, old and young, can relate to. In my head, Youngblood has always been the sharp cutoff of where Five Sauce just magically matured, and while I still think that there is some merit to that case, I guess it's a little more gradual than I gave Five Sauce credit for, because there are some mature themes on this album. Sounds Good, Feels Good has 3 singles on it. She's Kind of Hot, Hey Everybody, and Jet Black Heart. Of these, She's Kinda Hot is the song that stands out to me, and probably does to most people. Personally, I love that the song doesn't really take itself all that seriously, a choice that I think helps the sort of goofy and apathetic nature of the song. If I've got any complaint, I don't love the drums at the intro of the first verse because they sound a little artificial, but beyond that, the song is incredibly solid. Jet Black Heart is another good song, albeit one that I listen to far less. This is one of Five Sauce's early endeavors in confronting mental health and depression, and I think it works really well, especially for their target audience at the time. The song features a very honest vocal performance alongside some overwhelming but relatable lyrics. Sometimes it just helps to know that you're not the only one going through these things. Moving on from singles, Money is another great track. She Looks So Perfect is a pretty hard opener to follow up, but Money puts in the work with some powerful guitars and a great chorus. This is never a song I see get talked about all that much, and I think it's about time we start giving Money some more love. The song by Australian pop rock band 5 Seconds of Summer, not the currency that drives our species to the brinks of insanity. Moving on from Money, however, let's talk about one of Sounds Good, Feels Good's catchiest songs, Permanent Vacation. This is one of the 5 Sauce songs that helps cement Michael as my favorite singer from the group. Not only are his vocals on point for the song, but he also has this awesome flow in the verses that keeps the song moving. And of course, the ba-ba-da-ba-ba-da-das are just impossible to not sing along to. Castaway is another song that I find myself returning to pretty frequently, probably my favorite track off Sounds Good, Feels Good. The rapid drums and polished vocals all helped contribute to this dire, intense tone across Castaway's 3 minutes. I think a highlight for me is the pre-chorus, especially with the brief dip to silence before going into each chorus. In terms of songs I've slept on, Fly Away comes to mind. When this song came on during my most recent re-listen, I unironically thought that I'd accidentally queued up Newfound Glory or Simple Plan because the song just sounds so nostalgic towards that era of time in the best way. Stylistically, I think this is one of 5 Sauce's best punky songs that they have. I won't spend too much time talking about the songs that I just find forgettable on Sounds Good because I don't think I really have anything constructive to say besides that I find them forgettable. So let's talk about the ones I actively dislike, starting with Vapor, a song that I find to be incredibly boring in terms of instrumentals, lyrics, and pacing. This is always a point on the album that just sort of lulls for me and destroys the pacing, and the repetition in each verse just doesn't work for me. More often than not, Vapor is a skip. Speaking of poor repetition, here's Waste the Night, which features quite possibly my least favorite chorus from any 5 Sauce album. The verses also feel like they're missing something, maybe like a bass line or something in the lower register, but the wait for the chorus never feels worth it. No hate if you love the song, but Waste the Night is famously a skip for me as well. Finally, I hate to say it, but I also don't really love Outer Space Carry On. Let me clarify. I love Carry On. Don't love Outer Space. I wish I could because there are a lot of aspects I really love in this song. The instrumentation features these little chimes that I really think sell the theme of Outer Space very nicely. And I think this is a knockout vocal performance for literally everybody that sings on the song, but the pacing drags Outer Space down for me, turning it from a powerful closer into a song that just overstays its welcome. As much as I love Carry On, I just don't have the patience to sit through Outer Space. Overall, while I don't really think Sounds Good, Feels Good either sounded that good or felt that good, I do want to keep 2 things in mind. 1, 5 Sauce are still pretty young at this point. We gotta have a certain bar for expectations here. And 2, if you like it, that's all that matters. I know I say it in every single video, so I apologize if this message is getting old or stale or repetitive at this point, but music is what you find in it. That's all that matters. All that matters is what it makes you feel and how it makes you feel, not what some random schmuck on the internet thinks. Hey, it's me, by the way, I'm the schmuck. Anyways, this closes out the Sounds Good era, for better or for worse. This leads us into a new era of 5 Sauce music with a drastically different tone and image. Youngblood, the 3rd album from 5 Seconds of Summer, released in June of 2018. Like it or not, you know at least one song on this album. This is also where the band saw some pretty drastic changes, as I previously mentioned. Firstly, they abandoned the sort of pop-punk sound that they conceived a few years back on Self-Titled in favor of more of a generic pop-rock sound. And secondly, the band matured as far as songwriting goes. They talk about a lot more darker themes, including, one-night stands, sex, sex on sofas, and yes, they say the word on this one. Front to back, consistency is the name of the game with Youngblood. The normal version of this album features 13 of their strongest songs, with the deluxe edition tacking on 3 more to that. Also, if I may add, other artists, take notes, this is how you do a deluxe album. I don't need a bunch of live versions and a bunch of demos. If you want to release that stuff, just put it on a separate EP. Don't add it to the album too. Don't disrupt my listening experience. Youngblood is perfect because you can still listen to the deluxe tracks without disrupting the original flow of the album as it was originally released. While this album is solid pacing-wise, and each track is pretty consistent as far as quality goes, the first half of Youngblood definitely feels like the better side in terms of pacing. There aren't many misses on this album, but if there are any, you're going to find them on the second half. Enough about that though, let's dive into Youngblood's 4 singles: Want You Back, Youngblood, Valentine, and Lie to Me. Once again, one of these things stands out from all of the others. You all might be tired of hearing Youngblood by now, but I haven't hit that point just yet. I missed when this song was at its peak popularity when it came out in 2018, only listening to it for the first time in 2021, so this is a relatively new song for me still. Dude, that was 4 years ago, it's not even new anymore. Either way, Youngblood is a song with great flow and tempo. I think it really shines with its vocal performances, however, especially in the chorus. Luke and company belt their hearts out, and everyone is on key, no dissonance whatsoever. Like it or not, it's pretty clear why this was the song to blow up off this album. While I think Want You Back is their weakest lead single yet, that doesn't mean it's a flat-out weak song. In fact, I'd hazard to say it's a strong song, both as a follow-up to Youngblood and as a standalone song. Like I said, pacing is a strong point on the album, and Want You Back helps to gradually slow things down from the blood-pumping Youngblood. The guitar flourishes on the final chorus also bring me new life, which is pretty cool. Continuing with Youngblood's amazing pacing, track 3, Lie to Me, is yet another banger and one of my favorites off the entire record. I love the desperate and pleading nature of this song, sold by Luke's incredible vocal performance. The live version of the song from the Royal Albert Hall with the full orchestra and choir also makes me feel like I'm ascending, which is perfect because it's called The Feeling of Falling Upwards. Moving away from singles, let's talk about Talk Fast, a song that nails its tone and tempo perfectly. A song that talks about a sort of hectic one-night stand type relationship like this needs a sort of energetic and almost frantically paced song to sell this message, and Five Sauce nails it on the head in this case. Talk Fast, like the relationship the song talks about, is fast, to the point, and it's over before you know it. Moving along is another track that I find myself going back to quite frequently. Aside from that uncomfortable naked on my sofa line, Moving Along is pretty solid. In particular, I love the gang vocals on every chorus, as well as the subtler harmonies. And while More doesn't feature my favorite chorus of all time, I'd be remiss if I didn't praise it for this insane instrumental. This feels like a song that came straight out of a Dude Perfect video. Babylon is probably the song that I call my favorite off the entire album, as well as my favorite Five Sauce track as a whole. Usually I'm not insane about bonus tracks, but this one is apparently an exception to the rule. Babylon features one of my favorite performances from Calum and is paced excellently, especially within the chorus. And of course, we cannot talk about Youngblood without talking about its insanely cinematic closer, Ghost of You. What I consider to be Five Sauce's best closing track on any record. If this song doesn't just break you, I don't know what to tell you. Ghost of You simply tears me apart with its relatively simple instrumental and powerful vocals from both Luke and Calum. If you ask me, Five Sauce have been pretty inconsistent with their closers up to this point, but the band finally hit their stride with Youngblood, closing out the record in an incredibly powerful and emotional fashion. In terms of songs I don't love, there's really only two. Let's start with Woke Up in Japan. While I do find the pre-choruses as well as Luke's verses to be pretty well produced and inspired, nothing else on the song really excites me all that much. It just sort of feels empty. Woke Up in Japan really just feels like it's missing something from an instrumental standpoint and takes way too long to build up to that point where we get a good payoff or release of pressure. Better Man also feels like a bit of an awkward inclusion on Youngblood. I feel like there's sort of a Latin influence on the song, which isn't a bad thing. Totally love that style of music. It just feels a little out of place on Youngblood. While it's a cool style to be emulating, it just feels more distracting on the track list than anything. And that's it. Like I said, Youngblood is a mountain of consistency in terms of both pacing and quality. But with an album as successful and acclaimed as Youngblood, where does the band go from here? Just as the planet went into a global lockdown, Five Sauce brought us their fourth album, Calm, which released in March of 2020. For the longest time, I was a big Calm hater, and looking back on it recently, I can't tell you why. While it is definitely far from my favorite Five Sauce release, Calm is a far better album than I ever gave it credit for. In fact, I'd even hazard to say that this is a pretty neat and inspired album. Calm sees the band evolving and innovating on the pop rock sound that they had started to develop on Youngblood. And whereas Youngblood really put the bass in the spotlight, Calm doesn't really conform to one instrument or style. We've got elements of rock, gospel, trap, and alternative across this entire record, blended into a seamless fashion under this atmospheric and echoey production. To me, the entirety of Calm feels like laying in the grass on a warm summer day, something that lines up perfectly with the album cover they chose. These stylistic successes are evidenced by Calm's 5 singles: Easier, Teeth, No Shame, Old Me, and Wildflower. Of these, the standout for me has got to be Old Me, a wonderful coming-of-age song. Other bands, take notes, this is how you look back on your past and growth in the form of song. The lyrical flow across the entire song is impressive. There are a few fast lines in Old Me that Luke absolutely crushes. This flow also really helps to establish some great pacing on the song and the record as a whole. While Old Me is definitely my favorite of the singles, and is probably just my favorite on the album, the song I've known longest off the album is Easier, because it was the first 5 seconds of Summer song that I ever actively listened to. While this is a song that I've definitely gotten tired of before, right now I'm feeling generous, so we're putting it into the good songs category. It's not the strongest song on the album, but as a lead single, it's passable, and a decent step up from Want You Back. This is another great song as far as pacing goes, and Luke's vocals are good, even if they sound a bit artificial at times. It does feel a bit disjointed from the rest of Calum stylistically, but it's not that egregious for me to knock it down a tier. And while I don't seek out the original version of the song that much, I adore the Live from the Vault version from 2019. Another song that I find myself coming back to frequently is Red Desert, the opening track of Calm. Red Desert is an incredibly cinematic way to introduce listeners to the sound of Calm, with these insane vocal harmonies in each chorus, something that really helps me picture a desert in my head while listening. Not in the same way is another song I go back to pretty often. Once again, this is a song with great pacing and lyrical flow, with Luke's performance convincing me that he can crush a rap track if he was ever to try. Beyond that, however, the actual substance of the song is powerful, documenting a relationship where the partners are just never on the same page with each other. As far as songs that I just didn't remember as well until this listen, Thin White Lies was a standout track for me. With its electronic drums and human percussion backing the track, it almost sounds like a teaser for the band's next album if you're familiar with that style. The chorus of Thin White Lies features a dope drop of gang vocals, powerful instrumentals, and a standout vocal performance from Luke, all of which gave me chills on this most recent listen. In terms of songs that I dislike from Calum, there's really only one. And it's a controversial one. I'm just so damn tired of hearing Teeth. Is that so bad to say? Right from the get-go, this already was a song that I wasn't fond of. It's got good pacing and build-up from verse to chorus, but the overwhelming majority of Teeth is just kind of boring to me. I will say, however, that there is a version of Teeth that I really do love, and that is, of course, the live version from the Royal Albert Hall. If you haven't listened to that album, go, right now. Go do it. It will change your opinion on a lot of songs you don't like, hearing these like orchestral cinematic versions of all these songs. Just trust me on it. So that's it. That's Calm. We've got one more mainstream 5 Sauce album before we start diving into some solo projects. And this one is a doozy. Five Sauce 5, the band's palindromatic 5th album, released in September of 2022. And I don't know how the rest of the fan base feels about this album, but for me, 5 Sauce 5 is on the controversial side. This is probably the straight 5 Sauce album on this list that I've listened to the least, and I think I'm totally justified in that. 5 Sauce 5 is 19 freaking songs long, spanning an hour and 4 minutes of runtime. No matter how good or bad the music itself is, that is flat out an intimidating listen. As is with an album of this length and nature, there are bound to be quite a few misses, and 5 Sauce 5 is no stranger to that rule. A lot of this album ends up blending together to me, and it's all a very distinct chill vibe from anything that they had done on previous albums, but many songs fail to distinguish themselves from each other on this project, in my opinion. While the pacing is off and the track listing is bloated, however, 5 Sauce 5 really shows perfection of this pop rock style that the band has been developing. I think this record is the most polished and refined that the band's production has ever been, which makes the high points of this record often soar above other past record highs. Complete Mess, Take My Hand, Me, Myself, and I, Blender, and Older, the album's 5 singles, are exemplary of this masterful production. Complete Mess stands out as this spacey, atmospheric piece of pop rock. I'm not usually one for soft-spoken and breathy vocals, but in the case of Complete Mess, they fit in perfectly. I'm not sure exactly when Me, Myself, and I got so damn popular, but apparently this is a song that I have been sleeping on for a bit. Me, Myself, and I features some incredible pacing with track flowing effortlessly from verse to chorus. This is, of course, aided by Luke's vocals, which shine as a high point in the track for me. Take My Hand is another song I adore from 5 Sauce 5, though admittedly not one I come back to as frequently. If you're returning watchers of the channel, you know that I'm a sucker for a cheeky love song, and Take My Hand is no exception to that rule. I love this song especially though because it feels so peaceful, like a deep breath or a cool breeze. Don't get me wrong, I love a fast and upbeat love song like anyone else, but sometimes I feel artists have a tendency to rush to the finish line. Take My Hand takes its time, enjoying the journey without overstaying its welcome. Joining the list of songs I've slept on since its release, Blender is quite possibly my favorite track off of 5 Sauce 5. Yet again, Luke has an insanely cool lyrical flow from start to finish on the song, with the groovy bass line and atmospheric synths helping to add accentuation and syncopation. Blender is a song that I legitimately can't help but sing along and bob my head to whenever it comes on. Branching out from singles, however, I think Best Friends is another high point of 5 Sauce 5 for me. I feel like there aren't a lot of platonic love songs out there, songs that deal with the love that you have for your closest friends, the ones that have been there for you since day one. If you ask me, this is a pretty neat addition to that small collection of songs, and I think we need more songs sort of in this concept. Okay, time for the lower end of 5 Sauce 5. And I don't even know where to start. As I mentioned, lots of this record blends together for me, and there are a ton of tracks that fail to stand out or make a lasting impression. Some of these include Easy For You to Say, Bad Omens, Haze, and pretty much anything after Best Friends. But one song that sticks out like a sore thumb is Bleach. It just puts me to sleep, man. That's all there is to it. I guess the chorus is sort of interesting, but Bleach sort of feels like it's building up to something across its 3-minute runtime, and then it just never really amounts to anything. The track just feels unsatisfying. Well, that said and done with, we are officially through every single main 5 Seconds of Summer record. This is normally the point where I'd rank everything I've listened to, but this video is double the length. We've got 5 more albums to listen to. So without further ado, let's dive into the band's solo catalogs. We're going to start with my boy Luke Hemmings, whose debut solo album, When Facing the Things We Turn Away From, came out in August of 2021. This is a project that I followed pretty closely right up until its release, making it one of 2 solo projects that I've actually listened to in full prior to starting this video. That being said, the last time I listened to it in full was 4 years ago when it first came out, so this is basically going to be another first listen for me. Stylistically speaking, this is a pretty big shakeup from anything 5 Sauce has done up until that point. If we're comparing it to other projects, it sounds most like something off of Calm or 5 Sauce 5, but even that comparison doesn't really feel all that fair. When Facing, no, I'm not saying the full name every single time, has this distinct atmospheric and echoey vibe across its 12 songs. The album doesn't necessarily feel empty, but it feels like they all take place in this broad, empty space with echoes that help sell some of the lonely and sadder elements of each track. While Luke's style on this track is fresh and inspired and new from anything we'd heard before, at least as far as 5 Sauce goes, pacing does feel a little strange across When Facing. While we don't ever hit the high-octane, fast, punky speeds of 5 Sauce records past, we do jump a bit harshly between upbeat and slow tunes. More than anything, the pacing just feels a little disjointed as a result, and I think When Facing might have benefited from a different track ordering or even a shorter tracking. That's enough whining for now though. Let's talk about When Facing's 4 singles: Starting Line, Motion, Place in Me, and Mum. There are a few breakout singles that have captivated me as much as Starting Line has. Sonically, it captures the sensation of flying. It starts off so peaceful and calm, like you're floating, and then slowly builds up to the point where you feel like Superman soaring across the world. Pacing is also pretty great on this song, especially in Luke's vocal dynamics. They really range from starting really softly into gradually escalating into louder, fuller vocals, something that I think works incredibly well to his favor. I also want to say that Starting Line really showcases the power that a lead single can hold. That first single that you showcase can be a make or break moment in terms of audience retention for this project that you want to release. We'll come back to this later because it actually does become important, but for now let's talk about Baby Blue, another single. This is a song with incredible pacing and tone, reminiscent of Post Malone's Circles to me. Baby Blue also shines with its instrumentation and production. All of these spacey and atmospheric sounds really help to tie the song together. That's enough about the singles for now though. Let's move on to some other standout songs, starting with Saigon. Next to Starting Line, this is the song I've listened to the most off of When Facing. To nobody's surprise, it's another love song, but this is much more personal than any generic love song, documenting a real tale between Luke and his now wife Sierra. The personal touch really helps from a songwriting perspective, with the song almost feeling like a memoir of sorts. While Saigon is a track that I've loved dearly for years, Repeat is one that surprised me in a good way. I couldn't decide if I liked this one or not at first, but I think it's growing on me. I can certainly do less with the vocal post-production on the song, but the instrumentation on this track is powerful without being overbearing. Going back to the singles for a bit, Mum was another nice surprise. It almost feels like if someone like the 1975 made their own cover of Bring Me the Horizon's Avalanche, at least as far as instrumentation and production goes. The sudden increase in dynamics on each chorus, accentuated by the backing percussion and vocal harmonies, really helped to keep the song flowing and paced nicely. Alrighty, Time for the songs that I was not so crazy about, starting with Place in Me, an absolute snooze fest of a single if you ask me. While carrying an emotional set and powerful delivery of lyrics, Place in Me struggles from a pacing standpoint. To me, it feels like it takes a little too long for the song to really get moving. As a result, my interest is lost pretty early into the song, and it's usually a skip. Bloodline is the other low point for me. Between the airy vocals and simple piano instrumentation, the song just puts me to sleep, no matter how compelling the lyrics of the song might be. And that's a wrap on that. Luke has just the one solo album, so it's about time that we move on to another artist. You didn't think I was going to skip Boy, did you? Oh, I almost did. I didn't know where an EP fit in with the rest of these albums because I've never included EPs in these videos. However, after a re-listen, I felt like Boy was good enough to include. Boy is a small but consistent collection of songs, and in my opinion, it's a decent improvement on what When Facing started 3 years prior. This is evidenced by the EP's two singles, Shakes and Close My Eyes. Shakes is a song that I've admittedly never been so crazy about, but Close My Eyes, on the other hand, well, I like Close My Eyes. God, I love this song so much. Right from the first time I heard it, it became an immediate staple of my rotation. Definitely one that I still go back to this day. Tone-wise, it almost reminds me of The Overpass by Panic at the Disco, and how it makes me feel like I'm racing a car down the highway. The distortion in the opening drumline to begin the song is also pretty damn cool. It's a great way to start off the song. I'm Still Your Boy, the opening track of the EP, is another high point for me. While it pales in comparison to Starting Line, I'm not all that moved by Luke's vocal performance on this song. The instrumentation and production is really interesting. Starting off with a solo guitar before fading into these weird flourishes and harmonies is a great way to build up pressure across the entire song. If any song on Boy surprised me though, it was Benny. I'm not quite sure how this song didn't make it into my playlist before, but goddamn, Luke Hemmings is that guy, pal. I don't know if groovy is the right word to describe the song, but it's definitely the first one that came to mind. This was an immediate addition to my playlist, and I've been listening to it pretty frequently since my first listen for this video. In terms of weaker songs, there really aren't that many, if any at all. Most of my complaints are nitpicky and unconstructive, so I'm not even going to bother with them, but Boy is a prime example of quality over quantity in my opinion. It sacrifices the longer studio album length for a more compact and stronger collection of songs, a choice that the project thrives on. For now though, there's no time to dwell on that. We've got 3 more Aussies to review still, so step aside Luke, it's time to let the drummer sing. Of the 4 members of Five Sauce, the first to engage in a solo career was Ashton Irwin, with 2020's Superbloom. 5 years later, listening to it for the first time, I'm a little conflicted. For starters, I think this is the first time I've actually heard Ashton sing, or at least the first time I've recognized his isolated voice. He's definitely not my favorite vocalist from Five Sauce, but that doesn't necessarily mean he's bad. In the context of Superbloom, I think the best way that I can describe his vocals are cautious. For a debut album, I think it's totally reasonable to play it safe a bit though. As I've mentioned before, debut albums are exactly for that. Finding your comfort zone, learning from mistakes, and honing your style. Another thing I noticed is that it's been incredibly hard to pin a genre or style on Superbloom because Ashton doesn't really conform to any single trend or consistent genre with these 10 songs. Somehow it works though. We've got heavier influences, cinematic string sections, synthy indie pop bangers. He really does do everything. To me, however, this is a bit of a double-edged sword. While I enjoy most of his stylistic choices, Superbloom does feel janky as a result of how it bounces from style to style to style. On top of that, while the instrumentals are pretty cool, I think they aren't mixed well at all. If a song has a particularly loud or bold instrumental, there's a good chance that it's drowning out everything else in the song, and that includes Ashton's vocals. Even the drums can't really compete with the rest of the instrumentals a lot of the time, which is a shame because he's the drum man. He plays the bongos. Pacing is also a bit of a bummer across Superbloom's 10 songs, and it's not outwardly terrible, but several songs contribute to this, either overstaying their welcome or taking a bit too long to reach a satisfying drop. And again, just because a song is 5 minutes long doesn't mean it's inherently bad, but in this case, it does drag the record down a bit. Let's put a hold on the general overview for a moment, however, and talk about Superbloom's 3 singles, those being Skinny Skinny, Have You Found What You're Looking For, and Scar. As far as lead singles go, yeah, Skinny Skinny ain't doing it for me. While I do love the harmonies and background vocals on Skinny Skinny, I think it takes a bit long to get to a satisfying point for me. It feels like the song doesn't really pick up or do much interesting until the 2.5 minute mark, which by that point, you've lost me. Even once we hit that satisfying point, however, I don't think it does anything to blow me away. This takes us back to the discussion of why lead singles are just so important, because if I can't get invested in the very first song you put out, what makes me think I'm going to check out anything else with an open mind? Beyond Skinny Skinny, however, the other singles aren't that offensive. Scar is one that stands out to me both as a single and as an opening track to Superbloom. It's a cinematic song, almost reminding me of something by Mariana's Trench, like the opening of a musical. The harp flourishes to kick things off are excellent on the song, and as previously mentioned, I just wish we had more drums on this project, but at this point my expectations are in check. Have You Found What You're Looking For is another solid track, again both as a single and as a follow-up to Scar. It contains vocals that actually excite me, and I wish Ashton would have pushed himself more in this project like he did with this song. Either way, Have You Found What You're Looking For is a great reminder that Ashton can do a lot more than just drum. The dude can actually sustain a note, and don't you forget it. Moving away from singles, Sunshine is another song that caught my interest, a song that really fluidly blends multiple styles. To me, this song sounds like a hybrid of something from sour Olivia Rodrigo and 21st Century Breakdown Green Day. And what I'm trying to say is Sunshine contains some of the cinematic and somber strings of something like Happier, with the spacey and atmospheric Last Night on Earth, a combination that works surprisingly well. Anyways, enough about other artists, let's get back to Ashton, and let's talk about another great song, that being Sweetness. Following Sunshine, I wasn't expecting these heavier instrumentals, but somehow it works. Similar to Scar, this is a very cinematic song, something that I can definitely see as a backing track for a program on ESPN. Now, for the songs that I don't love as much, I've already complained more than enough about Skinny Skinny, so I'm not going to waste any more time doing that. Instead, let's talk about the other song on Superbloom that really brings the project down for me, that being Greyhound. I really wish I could stomach this song a bit more because the instrumental to me is so interesting. Personally, I find the writing on the chorus to be quite bland and repetitive, and once again, the mix to be pretty overwhelming. I feel like I can barely hear the drums on this chorus. Greyhound also nears on overstaying its welcome territory, but I don't think it's that egregious, so I'm not going to read into it too much. And that pretty much wraps up all of my notes on Superbloom. And while I love the stylistic choices and influences that Ashton used on this record, the distracting mix and cautious vocals did leave a bit to be desired. Thankfully though, Ashton has another record that we can check out. Blood on the Drums, the sophomore record from Ashton Irwin, released in July of 2024. And right from the get-go, this is a massive step up from Superbloom. Almost everything sees an improvement in one way or another on this record. The mixing, incredible. Every element is nicely balanced with one another. Songwriting, eloquent. Not that it was bad on Superbloom, but there's a clear improvement on this record. Pacing, massively improved. Especially considering that this album is 6 songs longer than Superbloom and is basically the same length. If any change is most prominent, however, if any change is most important that we call out, it has got to be Ashton's vocals. It just feels like there's a newfound sense of confidence with him in his voice. These 16 songs feel like a far more confident performance from Ashton as far as singing goes, something I'm incredibly stoked to see. Blood on the Drums contains 4 singles: Straight to Your Heart, Break Up, Blood on the Drums, and The Canyon. Straight to Your Heart shines for me as an incredible lead single and pivotal piece of Blood on the Drums pacing. The song wastes no time in getting down to business, introducing us to the new sound of Blood on the Drums. This is leagues beyond Skinny Skinny if you ask me as far as quality and pacing go. Breakup is the follow-up to Straight to Your Heart, and oh my god, this is one cool instrumental. The chorus is admittedly not my favorite, but the start of the song left my mouth hanging open. It's an excellent track to keep the album's pace moving and flowing from Straight to Your Heart. The title track, Blood on the Drums, continues this insane 3-track run to kickstart the album. I can't deny that Ashton picked a great title track in the form of this song. Once again, this is another song that would go great on ESPN or Dude Perfect. The instrumental is contagiously catchy. Oh my god, I just keep piling songs into this good songs category because I See the Angels as yet another standout track from Blood on the Drums. This is also probably what I think I'd call my favorite track from the album, but there's so many good ones that it's so hard for them to compete. Ashton's voice really shines in the song, and I think it really showcases his growth from album 1 to 2. On this song, he sounds reminiscent of Martin Johnson from Boys Like Girls in the best way possible. On top of Ashton's stellar vocals, the song is eloquently written and paced wonderfully. Okay, if I keep talking about good songs, this video is going to go even longer than it already is, and you see the length of it, so we can't keep doing this. As a quick lightning round, other tracks that I have been loving from this record are Lose You, Little Spark, and Wicked Habit. As far as low points go, there really aren't that many present on Blood on the Drums. I guess if I had to pick one, I would start with Rebel at Heart, a track I'm bringing up just to have something in this category. My only real complaint is that the instrumental feels sort of disjointed and without a consistent tone, but that's not nearly bad enough for me to take it down a notch or skip it at all. Again, at this point, this is really just nitpicking for the sake of nitpicking. And of the 4 singles, The Canyon is definitely the one that I find the weakest, but that's not even really to say that it's bad. Pacing-wise, it nears on overstaying its welcome territory, and it doesn't really feel like a proper start to part 2 of the album, but other than that, the song is incredibly solid. Following Superbloom, I admittedly had incredibly low expectations for Blood on the Drums. I was unironically dreading listening to this one, but it's safe to say that not only has Ashton exceeded my expectations, but he did so with flying colors. Bravo, Mr. Irwin. Thank you for proving me wrong. I will never doubt you again. And I think it's time to talk to the bass man. In spring of 2025, Five Sauce bassist and vocalist Calum announced his debut solo album. After a handful of singles, Order Chaos Order released in June of the same year. Calum is a member of Five Sauce that I have a bit of an interesting relationship with. Bluntly put, he's always been my least favorite singer of Five Sauce, resembling sort of the nasally Tom DeLonge of the group to me. As a result, I put my expectations a bit lower going into this album, and I couldn't have been more wrong. Solely from a vocal standpoint, this is not at all what I was expecting from a Calum performance. He spends a fair bit of time in those lower registers, something that I feel like we haven't seen him do much on Five Sauce records. These are vocals that made me believe in him as a singer, so from the bottom of my heart, I'm sorry for ever doubting you, Calum. Stylistically, Order Chaos Order has this dope electronic influence across its 10 songs. In the best way possible, this album feels like something straight out of 2015, reminiscent of something almost like Electric Love. Pacing is another strong suit on this record, at least to me and my goldfish brain. Songs are placed in a way that makes sense to me, gradually flowing into one another, and adjusting tempo from track to track as needed. The ordering of these tracks feels like it was very intentional to keep the pacing nice, so I appreciate that. Order Chaos Order features 3 singles, those being Don't Forget You Love Me, Call Me When You Know Better, and Sunsetter. Of these 3, Call Me When You Know Better is the one that I immediately gravitated to and added to my playlist after my first listen. If you've ever listened to I Don't Know How But They Found Me before, you'll probably agree that this feels like a bit of a heavier, more rock-influenced version of something like Modern Day Kane or Downside. Call Me When You Know Better keeps the energy flowing and the album moving following Don't Forget You Love Me. Speaking of, let's talk about Don't Forget You Love Me, the song that inspired the Electric Love comparison earlier. I think the only words I can use to describe this song are timeless or classic, and how it perfectly feels like a song I could have heard 10 years ago. Nostalgia isn't the only thing doing heavy lifting though. Don't Forget has a great 6/8 feel that's perfect for head bobbing or obnoxiously skipping down the sidewalk. You can't not enjoy this song, it's just so good. Endless Ways is another track that stands out to me, almost emulating an indie rock vibe similar to something like Wallows. While it does take a bit longer than I like to get moving, once the track really starts, we're met with an upbeat and fun performance from Calum, a nice set of elements to pair with the positive themes of self-discovery and growth stemming from relationships. As far as songs I'm not so fond of, I'm not really coming up with anything. If you ask me, this is the perfect middle of the road album. The perfect bowl of porridge. It does lean on the shorter side, just like most of the other solo records on this video, so I don't have quite as much to say about it. However, I'll end off with this. If you're like me, and you're a Calum skeptic, give this album a shot, and I think you'll find some fresh perspective and at least a few songs to really enjoy on it. Either way, there's no more time to dwell on Calum. We've got one more album to talk about before we wrap up this video, so let's get into it. Finally, we are brought to the most recent release from the Five Sauce crew, Michael Clifford's Sidequest, his debut album, released just last week in July of 2025. Bluntly put, this is not an album I was excited for. Now that might be weird for you to hear, especially after I credited Michael as being my favorite vocalist from Five Sauce. This is one of the Five Sauce songs that helped cement Michael as my favorite singer from the group. So you'd think this would be a project that I would be incredibly hyped for. Earlier, however, I talked about the power of a strong lead single. I didn't really like this album's lead single. Once again, as a listener, if your first single to promote an album stinks, what makes you think that I will be giving the full album a shot? This is the exact problem I faced with Sidequest, where one poor single killed any excitement I have for the upcoming release. Because of my distaste for that first single, I didn't check out the other ones either. I avoided Give Me a Break, even though I'm arguably a pretty decent fan of water parks. and I didn't try Kill Me For Always, even though I've only heard good things about Porter Robinson. For this video, obviously I still listened to the full album, and while my rock bottom expectations were exceeded, it wasn't by a whole lot. Stylistically, I hesitate to call it a piece of TikTok music because I feel like that has a lot of kind of negative and bitchy connotations to it, but that's also just kind of the vibe I get. Michael creates a similar sound to artists like Knox that really pop off on social media. Sidequest feels like an album curated for viral success, but as someone who doesn't regularly engage in short-form music content in platforms like TikTok or Instagram Reels, I just feel like the project feels a bit awkward from front to back. Sidequest is composed of 3 singles, those being Cool, Give Me a Break, and Kill Me For Always. One thing that does stick out to me is that these singles are a bit feature heavy. Part of me wishes that we got to hear a little more solo Michael before the full album drop, but also can't blame him for wanting to make a bag. So, I totally get it. Features are a great way to do that. I also know I dug into Cool quite a bit on this section, talking about how much I despised it, but honestly, I can't tell you exactly what made me so apathetic towards that song, because it was totally acceptable. I don't think it's all that special, but there are little production elements that I really enjoy, like the voice message at the beginning fading seamlessly into the drum beat. And of course, Michael's vocals are pretty solid on this track, even if they don't get super crazy or really surpass my expectations. Give Me a Break, on the other hand, is a song that I've been riding the fence on for the last few days. I started off really not enjoying this song, and while I still think the first half of the song isn't that great, once the Austin Knight feature finally kicks in, the song can be sort of salvaged. In particular, I think they really nailed the back and forth between each other, and on top of that, I think the chorus has some really fun rhythms to it, which help the song flow nicely. Fashion was another pleasant surprise from Sidequest, sounding like an old school 5 Sauce punk track. There are definitely a lot of influences from modern pop rock sounds on this song, but it does scratch my itch for that old school 5 Sauce sound. Thirsty is another track that I found myself actually enjoying, taking a bit of folksy acoustic inspiration. I think the simple acoustic track in the verses helps build up the height leading into each chorus, and there's a satisfying drop of pressure once we hit the chorus itself. Okay, time for the low points of Sidequest, starting with Kill Me For Always, a track that I really wish I could appreciate more. This is a song that feels like it's missing something to me. Each chorus feels like it's building up to some big release of pressure, which never really gets satisfied or rewarded. The lack of traditional percussion also sticks out like a sore thumb to me, but I'm sure there are a lot of people who don't mind this choice. Nosebleed is also another miss for me. Similar to Kill Me For Always, it feels like it's missing something. I think having a more prominent percussion track in the song would help sell some of the power and emotion the song is trying to elicit. And after contentiously going back and forth, I think Eclipse is also just a song I'm not crazy about. To me, Eclipse almost feels like an afterthought, like a song that just kind of got tacked on to the end of the record to get the track list from 9 songs to 10. While the verses feel pretty hollow and lifeless, however, I do want to praise the chorus of Eclipse, as brief as it is. Stylistic choices to add those moments of silence while Michael belts the high A is pretty dope, and occasionally makes a few hairs stand up. Beyond that, though, I don't think Eclipse is much to write home about. While Sidequest isn't an album that I see myself going back to all that frequently, I still want to keep an open mind about Michael Clifford going forward. To be totally honest, I think I went into this album with a lot of bias from the singles, and I think I would have enjoyed it a lot more if I hadn't formed those opinions earlier. What I'm trying to say is that if and when Michael makes another solo album, I'll be there to give it an honest shot. But that's neither here nor there right now. Let's move on to the part that you guys are actually waiting for. It is time to rank these suckers. This was initially a very easy task when there were just 5 albums, and then I doubled it and added 5 albums and an EP into the mix, and ranking all this stuff took a little longer than anticipated. Either way, I've done it, so let's see where everything ended up on the list. Number 11, Sounds Good, Feels Good. It has its iconic tracks here and there, but the album didn't feature a lot of growth that I would have liked to see in the band. 5 Sauce still have a certain bar of quality, so even though I'm ranking this album pretty low, please understand that it's still like a 6 or 7 out of 10 for me. Number 10, Superbloom. If the mix on this album wasn't so distractingly awkward, I think I would put Superbloom a lot higher, because I really do love a lot of the stylistic choices that Ashton makes. When I can barely understand what the lead singer is saying, though, I gotta put it pretty low, I'm sorry. Number 9, Sidequest. I just think this style of music isn't really for me. I think with some repeat listens, I could condition myself into enjoying Sidequest a lot more, but at that point, it kind of feels like forcing it a little too much. Number 8, 5 Sauce 5. If you ask me, 5 Sauce 5 is way beefier than it needs to be, and it takes away from a lot of the great moments that the record has to offer. Cut down like 4 or 5 songs, and then we're in business. And then we can talk about moving it up a bit. Number 7, When Facing the Things We Turn Away From. This album just has such a cool tone and vibe to it, and if you know any other similar projects like this, please let me know, because I would love to try it out. Well, I think it took Luke until the next project to really come into his shell. When Facing the Things We Turn Away From is still an incredible launch to his solo career, and it's something that I hope he continues to pursue. Number 6, Calm. Once again, I really can't tell you why I hated Calm as much as I did, because the overwhelming majority of this record is cool and groovy, and it gets some bonus points for having my favorite album cover on this entire list. Number 5, Boy. While Boy is the smaller set of songs, I think the quality is a lot more concentrated. If it's between 12 okay songs and 7 really good songs, I'm taking the 7 any day. Number 4, Order Chaos Order. This album ranks so highly for me because it took my least favorite vocalist from the group and gave me this widespread newfound appreciation for him. An album's gotta be pretty good to do that. Like, you can't deny that, right? Number 3, 5 Seconds of Summer. While I love what Five Sauce is doing nowadays with their modern sound, I cannot deny that the sound of Self-Titled and their little angsty teenage music is always gonna have a little special place in my heart. It's just so good, it's classic. Number 2, Blood on the Drums. If any record on this list was a pleasant surprise, it was Blood on the Drums. I can't tell you the exact extent to which I enjoyed this record, but just know that I'm listening to it quite frequently now. And if I had listened to this last year, it probably would have made it into my top 5 or top 10 albums of the year. And number 1, Youngblood. Youngblood has been my favorite Five Sauce record for as long as I can imagine, and I guess nothing's changing today. But to be fair, numbers 1, 2, and 3 in this list are pretty much all on the same level, and it could really change any day. So Youngblood's reign might not be permanent. For now though, it is safe at number 1. And with this video, I'm bringing back the segment for fans of, where I recommend other artists you should check out if you enjoyed the ones that we talked about in this video. Usually when I do this, it's just one artist, and I recommend 3 or 4 different artists, but we have a lot more crap to talk about this time. So we're gonna lightning round and give every single artist a quick little recommendation. So let's go. If you like 5 Seconds of Summer, you'll also really love Boys Like Girls. These guys started off in the pop punk scene back in the day, but now have this really nostalgic pop sound, going through a kind of similar evolution to 5 Seconds of Summer. My personal recommendation is the album Sunday at Foxwoods, but if you're looking for something more on the pop punk side, you can't go wrong with either Self-Titled or Love Drunk. If you like Luke Hemmings, you'll also really like Animal Sun. This is an indie rock band that is very similar style to When Facing the Things We Turn Away From. I believe the band is currently inactive, but they've got 2 amazing albums that you should check out, my favorite of which being Echoes of a Dream. If you like Ashton and Irwin, you'll like a whole bunch of artists. I'm just gonna rapid fire through a few real quick. AM by the Arctic Monkeys, Love and Titanium by Jeremy Renner, yes, that Jeremy Renner, and Where Do We Go From Here by Strangers in Suits. If you like Order Chaos Order by Calum Hood, you'll also like The Night Game. This is the solo project of Martin Johnson from Boys Like Girls, sounding pretty close stylistically to Order Chaos Order. I'd recommend starting with their self-titled album and going from there. And finally, if you like Sidequest by Michael Clifford, you'll also like Set It Off. Set It Off has been in the pop rock scene for a minute, but they also have a pretty diverse catalog of music. For Sidequest fans, my recommendation for Set It Off albums would either be Midnights or Upside Down, but you really can't go wrong with anything from their catalog. Finding a why for this video was difficult and intimidating. I was really struggling to come up with a reason for making this video other than I like the artist and I like making videos. And when I had finally discovered that why, listening to 4 brand new albums and compiling thoughts on all 10 of these albums in one single week proved to be a far more challenging task than I was ever expecting. Nevertheless, I'm glad I pursued this video because as a result, I've got so many brand new albums in my rotation, and every single one of them has at least one song that's made it into my rotation. And of course, it gave me another chance to explore my love for 5 Seconds of Summer. I believe I've heard rumors that they have got a 6th album on the way, so it's safe to say that I'm excited for that if and when it comes out. But for now, I will wait patiently.